Hey gang, Matt here, and today we're going to go through some of my press releases for 90s extreme metal albums. Trust me, it'll be a good time. So a couple of things about these press releases. They're mostly from record labels, and I did college radio in the early 90s. I was actually metal director, but I did 3 different shows. Most of them were on grindcore, death metal, mostly extreme metal in general, some thrash as well. And as metal director, I got a whole bunch of these. A lot of press releases for upcoming albums at the time, albums that are now pretty old, but are kind of fun to go through now, especially since some of these bands are still around, still doing really well. So I'm going to go through a bunch of this. I also got some of these press releases from doing album reviews for a lot of zines, especially in the 90s. I published zines, but I also wrote for other zines. And if you don't know what zines are, please go to Wikipedia and look that up. One of the radio shows I did back in the early 90s was the Slam Compactor. Great name, right? And I did a bunch of flyers for it. I found a few of them in this book, this ancient book I had to blow dust off of. 30 years almost, this thing is. And here's the radio show flyer I did. I did a bunch of these, and there I am, by the way, in all my glory. It was a good show. Again, death metal, grindcore, lots of good stuff. Stuff I'd like to put on YouTube, but, you know, copyright claims galore. They won't let me. So, there you go with that. First band I got, and these are going to be in alphabetical order since I'm pulling them out of the book that way, is Amorphis. There's their sheet from Relapse Records. This is for the 1994 release of Tales from the Thousand Lakes. And they do go through a bit of a bio, but I'm going to skip through that. Finland's foremost purveyors of monstrously melodious artistry, Amorphis have transcended all expectations and created what is inarguably the metal album of 1994. Tales from the Thousand Lakes perfectly combines elements of heavy metal, doom, death metal, and 70s progressive rock into a talented and extremely tasteful historical tribute based on Finland's national pole book, the Kalevala. Rock solid and musically mature beyond their years, Amorphis crafts songs of the most epic proportions. Tales from the Thousand Lakes is an absolute masterpiece. I love some of the wording that a lot of the labels use to either hype or just generally sell the band. It's pretty fun. Next up is Animosity, who have an utterly ridiculous album cover, but I'll get into that in another show. This is for Get Off My Back. Let's see. Get Off My Back is the new record, a 5-song vinyl hate bomb, destined to crumble the foundations and send shrapnel through the flesh. The title song is an anthem for apocalyptic youth, the ultimate and total rebellion against tight-ass, power-crazy cops, parents, politicians, and whoever the F thinks he can tell you what to do. Hilarious. With my death screams in anger at our pathetic war-obsessive world through an intense narrative of discipline, desperation, and final ultimate relief through death. Eternal hatred is the real story, from beginning to the approaching end. All that God/Satan/preacher hype is set to rest, and the truth is now put forth. No pacification is a diatribe of merciless killing, inspired, in Tressler's words, by a yuppie and a sob who cut me off on the freeway. Forced entry is a lesson in blue balls. We wish you could feel it, just once. It's fun how they worded some of this stuff. I mean, a lot of this was just meant to be read by music directors and DJs and basically internal folks in the radio business. That's one of the other reasons I'm sharing this stuff with you, is because most people in the public have never seen press releases, especially for bands. Next up is Atrocity, Roadrunner Records. And let's see, this is for the album Hallucinations. Hallucinations is one of the few death metal concept albums. It is a story of a young person who dies from a heroin overdose. The band are quick to point out that while they are a death metal band, they do have a strong message in their music. I didn't know, is death metal not supposed to have any sort of message? I don't know. It's kind of funny. Armed with an amazing cover by legendary artist H.R. Giger and tremendous support from the underground, Atrocity are primed and ready to make their U.S. debut. And I guess they did just that. Next up is a band you might be familiar with because I covered them. I actually did some live material with them in a previous special. This is Benediction. Fun to find this after all these years of becoming friends with the vocalist Dave Ingram. And I think Dave and the band will appreciate some of this. I don't even know if they've even read some of this. I mean, again, this is all generated by the labels. So, Benediction crushed all pessimistic speculation by recruiting vocal brute Dave Ingram in time for a successful European tour with Autopsy and Paradise Lost. Sales for Subconscious Terror were very positive through Europe, and Benediction toured Europe again in early 1991 with Bolt Thrower and Nocturnus. During May of 91, Benediction entered Silver Birch Studios in Birmingham and recorded an absolutely devastating follow-up to Subconscious Terror. Titled The Grand Leveler, this record features amazing production by Paul Johnston that brutally proved that Benediction had surely weathered the loss of Greenway and were much stronger as a result of his departure. They're talking about Barney Greenway, who went off to napalm death after this. Where is this? A fall 1991 mini tour with Dismember would bring Benediction even more acclaim, but yet another obstacle on the road to success arose when bassist Paul Adams quit, frustrated by the extensive touring. And it just goes on and on. But Benediction returned with an absolute classic and historically impressive compositional crusade, guaranteed to bring benevolent bows from amazed American audiophiles. That's a bit wordy, isn't it? Anyways, The Grand Leveler is an amazing album. It's probably my favorite from Benediction. So it's nice to have this little memento, for sure. Next up is Cancer, a great British death metal band. This is for Death Shall Rise. That's their second album after To the Gory End. Both albums really great. To the Gory End's a little harder to find, but both are worth seriously checking out. Let's see. What does Cancer have to say? Death Shall Rise captures Cancer's pure, ferocious gore metal. Squeezing metallic blood out of every guitar solo on the record is former Death and Obituary guitarist James Murphy, whom Cancer met while on tour opening for Obituary. While recording Death Shall Rise in Florida, Cancer invited Murphy to do a guest solo on one cut. His work was so outstanding they asked him to do the whole record. Together, these three limeys and a yank deliver a recording of inflamed metal aggression that shows dexterity and focus in its execution. James Murphy, amazing guitar player. Check out any album he's on. Great stuff. Anything else? Let's see. Death metal has a reputation for being the most nauseating form of rock music known to mankind. Midland's combo Cancer are the exception to the rule, adding musicianship and an abstract sort of melody to the attributes of rotting flesh and gargled with razor blade vocals. Lots of fun. Cancer, it's good for you, says Morat, whoever the hell that is. So there you go. Next up is Dark Angel with Time Does Not Heal. Probably my favorite Dark Angel album. I know a lot of people like Leave Scars a little bit more, but Time Does Not Heal really does it for me. In fact, I interviewed Gene Hoglan for promotion of this album, and he had a lot of great stories about snuff films and the combat zones and, you know, all sorts of stuff like that. The dark underbelly of humanity, some of which is actually captured on this album. And it's probably even mentioned here. Of course, they interviewed Gene Hoglan at the bottom of this. Of course they do. I think he was a great spokesman for Dark Angel as it stands. Let's see where we are here. Time Does Not Heal is the first studio effort by the revamped, revitalized Dark Angel. Reinhardt's radically improved vocals and the auspicious writing debut of newest member Eriksson are but a few of the highlights that make Time the piece de résistance of Dark Angel's career. My singer can sing, and I enjoy utilizing that talent, says Hoglan. Ron is one of the best singers of the genre, certainly one of my favorites. With this record, I've realized that no matter how great you think your riffs are, without catchy vocals, they'll just float right over people's heads. My lyrics are reality-based. I'm fascinated by extremes. Fascinated by the extremes of human behavior that could cause someone to commit an act like rape. Vixen and the Bangles may have not recorded a song like An Ancient Inherited Shame, but frankly I think women deserve better treatment than they deserve or they receive from a lot of bands. Still, my lyrics are never gore for gore's sake, not even in a sexual manner. I wouldn't ever want to lay all my cards on the table. So, Dark Angel, Time Does Not Heal. Next up, Deicide. I have two for Deicide. Looks like I have one for Serpents of the Light and one for Legion. To many, Satan is a dead issue in the world of death metal and the rest of the musical world. When people hear that there is a satanic death metal band, there is generally a snicker of disbelief, accompanied by a "how lame" sort of attitude. Really? All right. However, Deicide are so much more than your typical death metalers ranting about Satan. Deicide is not your ordinary death metal band giving you some kind of disgusting autopsy lesson or relating a horror film in their own words. But aren't those good things? I don't know. Seem like you're making fun of Carcass and Obituary there, by the way. Anyways, there is no black makeup and fake blood running down their chins, nor is there any gothic keyboards or symphonies to back up their already dark and forbidding presence. Deicide has no need for such filler. They are the masters of their evil craft, coming down on all Christians for their belief in God and Jesus Christ and the lies and hypocrisies therein. Isn't it funny that this is actually a press release? You know? Yeah, from the label. Does the label represent these views? Let's see. Servants of the Light continues on the crushing legacy that Deicide has begun. Blah, blah, blah. As for Legion, that's Deicide's second album. Great album. Probably one of my favorites of them. I do love the first album. Maybe more. It's kind of a toss-up. Let's see. With each member boasting a heartfelt passion for the satanic arts, as well as a mutual worship for rabid death metal, one would think the members of Deicide share a personal bond stronger than that of the average band. Not so. Their common interest in Satanism, I'll put the quotes, by the way, is only the driving force behind Deicide's murderously maniacal music, not an excuse to hang out in the backwoods of Clearwater. Yeah, okay, sure. Anything else that's interesting here? Satanism and death metal have walked hand in hand, to hell and back. Thanks, Venom, by the way. For over a decade, ever since Venom first started the underground with the devilishly inviting Welcome to Hell album. Those years saw countless death metal bands adopt satanic demeanors, with few offering any lasting sincerity. Even highly influential bands like Venom, Possessed, and early Slayer, no matter how convincingly evil any of them might have appeared, also allowed a touch of bogus light to shine through their musical darkness. Who writes this stuff? Seriously. Yeah, and they live their lives proudly under the sign of the Black Mark. Thanks to Bathory, maybe. Anyways. Next up is Exhorder. A band that's actually back in the spotlight now with a great new album, and I'll probably talk about it in the future. But for now, we are going to talk about Slaughter in the Vatican from Roadrunner Records. Great album. This is their first album. The Law was their second. Originally taking shape back in 1985 under the name Sabotage, their music at that time was more lightweight than their current brutal thrash style. Within 1 year, they realized they wanted to perform music more hardcore influenced, and with a full lineup in place, it was time to begin writing new material. At the time, they also changed their moniker to Exhorder, taken from the word exhort, which means to forcibly persuade someone against their will, a philosophy that certain band members regularly adhere to. After reading their lyrics, you can see why the name is so perfect. Yeah, again, Slaughter in the Vatican, brutal, uncompromising thrash. Absolutely. Let's see if there's anything on the back here. This does mention The Law. Maybe they were recording it at the time. But, let's see. The Law was recorded in New Orleans and mixed in San Francisco. Blah, blah, blah. 9 songs of sheer brutality with a groove. Beaton's fat, huge wall of sound production really highlights the heaviness already inherent in Exhorder's music. Lyrically, the band still express their hatred towards authority, organized religion, and mankind as a whole, with the venomous, spiteful vocals of Kyle exude pure attitude and sincere hatred, lashing out with a sort of effectiveness rarely heard in vocalists today. Yeah, all right. Exhorder. There you go. Next up is Gorguts, Canadian death metal, also on Roadrunner. I talked to Roadrunner a lot, by the way, back in the college radio days. Mark Abramson, if you're out there, you were the rep I talked to every Tuesday after I submitted stuff to CMJ and all the other trade magazines, usually top 10s, top 20s. But yeah, Mark was definitely part of my Tuesday afternoon music director business stuff I did. So again, if you're out there, there you go. So Gorguts. Let's go. This is probably for Considered Dead. Yes. A decent little album. Holding high the Canadian death metal flag. They have a flag, by the way. is Sherbrooke, Quebec's Gorguts. Although Canada may not be known for its brutal death metal, Gorguts' RC record debut, Considered Dead, will soon change all that. There are some good extreme metal bands from Canada, by the way. Quite a few, actually. Sacrifice come to mind. I like Voivod, too. So there you go. Let's see. While recording Considered Dead, the band were joined in the studio by several musicians. James Murphy, cancer, obituary, death, played lead in the song Inoculated Life, who himself has said that this is probably the best lead I have ever done. Hope he doesn't say that all the time, by the way. Also joining them was singer Chris Barnes of Cannibal Corpse, who did backup vocals on 3 tracks. From the opening notes of the intro, and then comes Lividity, you will immediately be overcome by Gorguts' ability to devastate and annihilate. Expect no mercy from these Canadian death metal masters. Don't expect it. Just don't. Next up is Grave. You probably know Grave. Swedish death metal, Century Media Records. One of the longest running Swedish death metal bands, Grave has created a sound and style which has been an inspiration on a number of the genre's more promising younger outfits. The group's legendary 1991 debut, Into the Grave, established Grave as one of death metal's most brutal new hopefuls, a title of the act cemented through a host of live performances across Europe and America. 1992's You'll Never See, the band's critically acclaimed second release, showcased their growing musical talent with a cleaner, stronger sound, appealing to a wider audience while retaining the group's trademark heaviness. Grave really is a great band. I haven't heard them in a long time, but I remember loving their early stuff. In 1993, they issued in Here I Die Satisfied, and there's a little bit of talk about Soulless here as well, but not much. Anyways, there you go. Grave. A lot of Roadrunner in here, isn't there? Yet another band. This is Immolation. And this is for... looks like... as they take way too long to find. This is for Dawn of Possession. I remember digging that album quite a bit when it came out. Let's see. Being at the forefront of the New York death metal scene, Immolation have been rapidly building their following since early 1988. With 2 demos behind them, their debut album for RC Records, Dawn of Possession, is sure to catapult them into the mainstream death metal ranks, alongside Obituary, Deicide, and Morbid Angel. And let's see. Anything else interesting? With songs leaning towards the darker side of life, Immolation frequently write down the struggles between good and evil. The title track, Dawn of Possession, reflects the dawn of a new age, the second coming of Christ, as the Antichrist. Little twist there. Along with the rise of spirits and demons and the fall of angels. We've never seen that in death metal before. Nah. The 10 tracks on their debut album trace the band's history from their early demos to their most recent material. Once released, the world will have a new name for brutality. Immolation. Prepare to be immolated. That was creative. Anyways, there we go with that. So next up is everyone's favorite, King Diamond. And this was for The Eye. And I had quite a bit to say on King Diamond. There's a lot of history here. Let's see. King Diamond is angry. His new album, The Eye, displays this with a dramatic and at times perverse intensity. While King has come under attack in the past for his bold lyrical expressions and atypical beliefs, The Eye shows how far King can go when prompted strongly. The album contains depictions of murder, rape, drug-induced orgies, bizarre occultist rituals, and even the crucifixion of an infant. Brutal stuff? You bet. But before the PMRC, Reverend Donald Wildman and their ilk come crashing down on King for everything from destroying youthful minds to causing the hole in the ozone layer. There's something they should know here. Every lyric written for The Eye is based on fact. The entire album was taken from Christian history. Which is true. The Eye is actually one of my favorite King Diamond albums. I think maybe Conspiracy is my very favorite, and they do talk about Conspiracy here as well, interestingly enough. Full discography here as well. It's kind of nice. And what else? Yeah, it's just a little bit about Conspiracy here. The Conspiracy Tour was King Diamond's most spectacular. Inspired by the horror-filled extravaganzas put on by Alice Cooper, King's live show is a vivid, larger-than-life recreation of the album's story, complete with stage props and actors portraying the story's other demented characters. Fantastic. So there you go. King Diamond, The Eye. And if you're not sick of hearing the name Roadrunner Records yet, here's Malevolent Creation. And this was definitely for the Ten Commandments, I'm pretty sure. It's a fantastic album. Let's see. Yes, exactly that. Although they weren't part of the classic Florida death metal wave that spawned the likes of Death, Obituary, Atheist, and Morbid Angel, Malevolent Creation are very much focused on making a name for themselves with their own adaptation of that popular southern death metal sound. And they go through their history a bit here. Malevolent Creation have had to deal with several personnel shuffles over the last 2 years, but now have a stable lineup. The newest member of the Malevolent lineup is Axeman Jeff. Jesus Christ, I'm not pronouncing that crazy Polish name. Originally from Buffalo, New York, he was the leader of Buffalo-based Leviathan, along with vocalist Chris Barnes of Cannibal Corpse. His exceptional guitar playing and intricate lead work has added the final touches to Malevolent's brutal, yet progressive sound. Let's see. Self-proclaimed America's ugliest. All right. Malevolent Creation have acquired their distinctive sound, combining the best of both thrash and death metal to create the most intense assault heard in years. Brett Hoffman's brutally tuneful vocal delivery reaches new heights in aggressiveness and adds that extra dimension to Malevolent, cementing their over-the-top sound. Unlike most death metal singers, Brett stays away from growling, giving him his distinctive tone, which will work in the band's favor where their long future term is concerned. And by the way, rest in peace, Brett Hoffman. He died recently, unfortunately. I interviewed Brett Hoffman back around this time for college radio. I think I still have the tape somewhere. I don't know. I interviewed a lot of bands from Roadrunner. Obituary, Malevolent Creation, of course. I was going to do an interview with Glenn Benton of Deicide. I had him on the phone. I was going to do a live interview with him. And I told him he needed to wait about 5 minutes because the record wasn't over and it wasn't ready to go back on the air. And then I think 3 minutes passed. He's like, "Ugh, F this." Except he didn't say F and just hung up the phone. And so the interview with Deicide never happened because Benton's got an attitude. If you can imagine that. But yeah, I interviewed Obituary, a bunch of bands from this label. Good stuff. Good times. And yeah, Malevolent Creation. Ten Commandments, great album. Fantastic album. So this is the end of part one of this two-part look at my press releases. Definitely watch part two. To be a completist. You should watch the second one. And I'll see you there. Till then, take care and ever forward.